how to get people who genuinely have a claim on asylum through the system quicker, and those who don't, well, sent back. Earlier, I spoke to Tauhid Pasha, who is from the International Organization for Migration. I started by asking him how important it was to speed up the process for people seeking asylum.
Asylum claims should be prioritised. They should be processed fairly and they should be processed efficiently. And that's really important. I think it's important from two counts. One is that it gets genuine asylum seekers more quickly integrated into UK life and society, so they become productive migrants in UK society. They're able to work, they're able to contribute properly. And it also acts as a deterrent for those who are not genuine asylum seekers, because they know that coming to the UK, their claims will be determined in a very efficient manner.
We heard yesterday from the Border Force Union, the ISU, somebody who's working at Manston, seeing those numbers creep up and up over the last month or so, saying, well, it can take 5 to 8 years at the moment for someone who claims asylum to then, once they've appealed several times, and if it's unsuccessful, they can actually be in the United Kingdom for that long. I guess the argument runs that if you speed up the process, it will make it less attractive for people to come over to pay traffickers, or this is one way of maybe getting on top of the traffickers, because, the system is robust and you can't stay as long if you don't have the right to stay.
There are indeed a couple of ways of taking the business model away from traffickers and indeed smugglers. One is to have fair, and I would say fair, asylum processing, not at the cost of speed, fair and efficient, but the two can go hand in hand. And secondly, we have to be opening up safe and legal routes of entry. And if we don't do that, people are going to be resorting to taking channel crossings. And the fact that they are crossing in small boats and the numbers have gone up isn't unrelated to the fact that the UK is now, it's effectively blocked off other routes of entry. So what we have to do is we now have to say, okay, how do we ensure that people can access the UK's asylum system?
We see the numbers shoot up. Back in 2020, channel crossings, people coming to the UK in small boats, 8,404. 2021, 28,526. 40,000 already. Could be up to 60,000 by the end of next year. When you look at those figures, people panic, let's be honest. They see a situation getting out of control. How does that compare to elsewhere?
The 60,000 at the moment is not the highest that the UK has faced. We had more than 80,000 claims in the early 2000s, and that was at a time when Somalia was imploding, Afghanistan, and the former Yugoslavia, as you'll remember. And so there was a huge pressure at that time, and then numbers went down. Numbers are going to go up and down, depending on what's happening, the Ukraine crisis and other global conflicts. So the answer here is that we really have to ensure that we can really try and get those, the UK has to work with other countries to really try and ensure that we can play our fair share, take our fair share of people who are coming in and who need protection. And the other thing to bear in mind is that when they come into this country and their claims are processed over a long period of time and they're held in conditions such as in Manston, then those conditions, there's a pressure on the taxpayer, there's a pressure on the people who are trying to host them in humane conditions. And we cannot, we have to ensure that the dignity and the welfare of migrants, everyone who is on the move, is maintained. And that's not negotiable.
Well, the government today said they were putting an awful lot of more money into that situation. They've made more hotel spaces available. They've upped by 50% the number of people working at the processing centre at Manston. So they say they are trying to get on top of that. And this isn't, as you've just rightly said, it's a global issue, isn't it? You only have to look at the number of people who died trying to cross the Mediterranean. So in that sense, the United Kingdom isn't alone in sadly having to kind of deal with the issue, and also seeing the loss of life on its shores for the very first time. But other countries as well. are going through the same process. So how can we, from your point of view, join up to solve this issue? Because it isn't something that individual countries face on their own. It's a global issue.
If we go back in time, and you rightly mentioned the Mediterranean, we only have to go back 7 years to 2015. At that time, IOM has been recording the number of deaths in the Mediterranean, and we've counted 20,000 deaths, which we've been able to record and account for so far. That is a huge number. English Channel, we had the largest loss of life last November, approximately 27 deaths, and that was 27 too many. But the numbers are relatively small in that respect. Italy and Greece and Malta faced the brunt at that time, and they had to step up and they had to speed up their asylum processing claims, but not at the expense of having fair and efficient claims. So, for example, if you look at Italy, if you look at Germany, if you look at Belgium, they are handling approximately 3 times more asylum claims per head of population. Countries like Austria up to 4 times more compared to the UK.
It's not facing the greatest numbers, but still it puts a strain on resources. There's other issues that local authorities are now pushing back against people being shipped out to their areas because, there is concern about high numbers of migrants arriving in smaller communities. What would you say to people listening to this who say, okay, what you're talking about there is larger countries with larger populations and therefore larger infrastructure, that they can better absorb those numbers compared to the United Kingdom?
No, absolutely. I think, no, the numbers I'm quoting are per head of population. So the UK can do more per head of population. So a larger country, of course, can take larger numbers. And the thing to remember here is that the longer you keep people in the asylum system, the more expensive it's going to be. Then you have to beg the question, why don't we get them through the system quicker? It's for their own benefit to do that. And the people who don't get asylum, they will be processed much more efficiently, and return mechanisms will be put in place for that. And that has to be the way forward.
That is Tauhid Pasha from the International Organization for Migration. 17 minutes past 6.